Welcome back to part 2 here of our first assignment walkthrough. What we're going to do now is go ahead and add in the rest of the sprites that we need for our assignment. I won't record all of this, but I'll record one to remind you what we're going to do. We're going to click on the little Pac-Man icon and then choose Load Sprite. Navigate your way to the folder that includes all of the sprites that you downloaded from the course website, and one by one, bring them in. So I'll call this one SPR underscore banana. And I'll go ahead and choose precise collision checking separate and uncheck separate collision masks and then say OK. All right, I'll bring in all the rest of the sprites in that folder and then we'll continue. And here we are. I brought in the rest of those sprites. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in another image, but this image, rather than saying it's a sprite, I'm going to bring it in as a background. It's an image that will appear behind everything else in our room. The way we bring that in is essentially the same as what you do when you bring in a sprite, only we're going to use a different tool from the toolbar. So I'm going to select the background import button, that's right here. Choose load background. Go into that same folder where I've got all those other sprites and choose the one called wood GIF. Following a consistent naming scheme, I'm going to call this one, I don't know, I'll call it BG or BGD underscore wood. And I'll leave the rest defaulted as it is. Say OK. Now you'll notice now when that comes into my project, it shows up here in the backgrounds folder. Now that I've got all these other sprites in here, I can go ahead and create objects for the other fruit. Those objects aren't going to work very much like the apple that we've got. And in fact, I can duplicate the apple and then modify some of the events and actions that go with it. Before we do that, though, I want to do a little bit more with this apple. So let's do that next. Right now, our game has no sound in it. So I'm going to add in some sound to liven things up a little bit. And I bring in sounds very much the way I bring in everything else, only I use this little speaker icon to bring in the sounds. Find your way to the folder that you downloaded. And in that, you'll find an audio folder. And I'm going to bring in 3 sounds. I'm going to bring in one called click wave. And I'm going to call that SND underscore click. And then you'll see there are different attributes: uncompressed, compressed, uncompressed on load, and streamed. For these small sound files, which this click one is, GameMaker will automatically choose uncompressed. Most of the time, you can sort of go with what GameMaker chooses on its own. So I'll just say OK. I'm going to bring in another sound. This is going to be our explosion. Again, another small sound, and I'll let it go ahead and be uncompressed. Calling it sound underscore explosion. Now this third sound's a little bit different. It's actually going to be a full song called Theme of the Little People. I'll bring that in, and you'll notice what GameMaker did. Oh, and notice that this is a different type of sound, as an MP3, and it's quite a large file, so it's automatically selected what it thinks is the best way of using it compressed. So I'll just go along with what it says. I'm going to help myself to know that this is something that's slightly different than those other small sounds, so I'm going to label this one as music, and I'll call it music underscore background. Yes, I've gone away from the 3-letter identifier, but that's okay. And say OK. Now I've brought in those sounds. I'm going to go back to my Apple object and double click to open the properties window. Now I'm going to change my left mouse button click event by adding on a sound when the player clicks on it. So I'm going to come over to my palette of actions, select the main 1 tab, come down to the sound section and grab the play sound action and drag it on over. From the properties window, I'll choose the sound I want to play. I want the click sound. And then I can choose whether to loop it or not, and I don't want to loop it. I just want to play it once. And I'll say, okay. That's really all I need to have happen with this fruit. And in fact, that's all I really need to have happen with any of the fruit. So what I can do now to create all of the other fruit is simply right-click on that apple object, choose Duplicate, rename, or name, I guess I should say, this new object. So I'll call it OBJ, and I'll make this one be the banana. So I'm going to change the sprite to be the banana sprite. And then I might alter some of these actions a little. For example, the moving in a direction one, I'm going to make my banana be very fast. So I'll set it to 10. Because it's fast, I might give the player some more points than 20. I'll give them 50. And then I'll leave everything else the same. And I'll say, okay. I'm going to come down to my room, open it up, and I'm going to go ahead and add a couple of bananas. So I select banana, and then I come out and I'll just throw a couple of them in here. Say okay, save my work, and test it out. Now I've got these objects moving around. Oh boy, look at those bananas are cruising all over the place. If I click on an apple, I get rewarded with a little sound. Ugh. Oh, and I can't get those bananas. They're almost too fast. Yeah, all right. Oh, I got one. And I don't know if you're hearing it on the recording, but each time I click on one of those bananas, I'm rewarded with a little sound. I'd also like to have some sound that's playing in the background, and we brought in this background music. So let's go ahead and make that work before I create the rest of my fruit objects. To do that, I'm going to create another object. And this is going to be slightly different than the ones we've used so far, in that it's not going to have a sprite associated with it. It's just going to be used to sort of manage the game. So I'm going to call it obj_manager. It's going to have a create event, and its create event is going to be to play a sound. And the sound it's going to play is that background music, and it is going to loop because I want the music to keep playing. Right? That was sort of fast, but basically I created an object, I gave it a create event, and a play sound action that loops. And I say, okay. Come back into my room, and I need to place that manager object out into my scene where there is no other sprite. So I'll place it right here. And when I do that, you'll see it throws this little circle with a question mark in it. That just shows there is an object there. This won't be seen when the game is actually playing. To test that out, we'll hit play and see what we get. Now what I hear in the background on my end is some nice music playing in the background along with some sound effects when I click on the flying fruit. All right, what I'm going to do is I'll pause this recording and I'll go ahead now and create the rest of my fruit objects, and then we'll continue on. All right, I've added in all of my fruit objects, and then I went ahead and put them into my room as well. While I'm here in the room, I want to make use of this background image that we brought in earlier. Right now, behind our room, it's just this plain gray color. To bring in a background, you can select the Backgrounds tab here in the Room Properties window. Come down to the selection of properties in this window and choose this section here where it says No Background. Grab that background object and it will tile it automatically horizontally and vertically. And you'll see here it is out in my room. Now when I click that, when I click that, I can save my file, and we'll just quickly test that as well. Now I've got a nice background here. I've got all the fruit going around at different speeds, and I get a little reward sound when I click on the objects. Now next we're going to create a bomb object, and its action set is going to be a little bit different. And it is at this point that our first assignment deviates quite a bit from the tutorial that you've downloaded and have been following through. And that's because we're about to start working with some actions that no longer work in GameMaker. Worked in previous versions, but they've gotten rid of them for one reason or another. So we're going to change things up a little bit in terms of how our bomb works. First, let's go ahead and create our bomb object. So I choose create object. I'll call it obj underscore bomb. Choose bomb, the bomb sprite. And then we need to create some actions to go with it. This one doesn't need well, we want to have it move as well. So let's add a create event. And we'll do our fix to move as well here. Have it go off in whichever directions. And then I'll give it a speed that's pretty quick. I'll give it a speed of 6. We also want to play a sound if the player accidentally clicks on it. Now their goal is going to be to not click on it, so I'm adding a mouse event, again a left button one. And go to the main tab and grab a sound. We'll select our explosion sound that we brought in earlier. Now in the tutorial that you may be reading through, it asks you to put in a sleep action. That's been deprecated. It no longer exists. Basically what a sleep action did was to pause the entire game for a moment to let the player sort of notice that they had lost the game. Then we showed a high score table. That also no longer exists, so we're not going to do either of those. We're not going to pause things, and we're not going to show the high score table, and that's okay. We are, however, going to restart the game. And in order to restart the game, we're going to click on the Main 2 tab, come down to the game section, and you'll see the restart game action. Okay. We'll say okay and save that. Now let's go into our room, and we better add in our bomb or a few bombs, depending on how hard you want to make your game. We'll put a few of them in here. Say okay, save it, and play it. You know what? What did we forget to do? On our bomb objects, we forgot to add in a collide event so that it will collide with the wall, just like all of our other objects. So I've chosen collide with the wall, and then we're going to have it bounce off, and we'll just leave all the settings as they are here. And we've already placed instances of those bomb objects out into our room. And so when we update the script, what we're doing is updating sort of the template for that. So if I click on the bomb, I get an explosion sound and the game starts over. Now it's a little hard at the moment to see that the game has actually started over. One of the reasons why it's hard to notice is that we don't pause anymore, and we're not showing a high score table, but also because the player doesn't actually see what their score is. In older versions of GameMaker, the score would automatically show up at the top of the screen. It doesn't do that now. So we are now going to also deviate a bit from the tutorial that you've been looking at to allow our game to display the score. So I'll show you that next. To show the score on the screen here in GameMaker studio, we're just going to create another object. And this is going to be sort of like our manager object. In fact, we could to display the score on the screen, we're going to go back into our manager object that we created earlier, and we're going to add another event. This event is going to be the draw event because we want to draw the score out on the screen. So we click on the draw event, and from the drop-down menu, we're going to choose Draw GUI. Then the action is going to be to draw the score. So I select the Score tab, come up to the Score section, and choose the Draw Score action. When I do that, I'll get a Properties window will appear that lets me set the X and Y coordinate for that text that's going to show up on the screen. The X and Y in this case are going to be the upper left-hand corner of an invisible box that surrounds the text. I found that setting this to 40 by 40 for the X and Y works pretty well. We can also set the caption that is going to be some text that appears before the number representing the score. And we'll go ahead and just leave that as score and say OK and OK. Then we save our project one more time and hit play. It compiles, brings us out, and now you'll see here's our score showing up in the upper left-hand corner. And when I click on a fruit, the score goes up. And if I click on a bomb, it goes back to 0, and the game has started over again. Well, that's it in terms of what you need to do for assignment number 1. The last thing I need to tell you is how to submit your assignment. So let me show you that now. What you're going to be submitting for the assignment is not the published game, but rather your entire game sort of project folder that includes all of the stuff that's in it. This is going to be the folder that has the same name as your assignment. If you look at the top of my project window, you'll see as from the beginning of this walkthrough, I named it Brian_Nelson_assign1. Then it was added to with project and .gmx. This is the thing that you want to submit. So where in the heck do you find that? Well, you can close out of your project for now. And what you're going to do is locate where on your computer you originally stored that project. In my case, it's in Documents, Game Maker, and then Projects. And then you'll see here it is, and it's actually a folder. And you'll see it's got all of the stuff that's inside there as well. It's got this, inside that folder, it's got a file with that name, but you don't want to submit only this. You actually need to submit this entire folder in order for this to be able to be opened by me so that we can test it and give you a grade. So to do that, what you're going to do is create a zip file. Just leaving that same name, and it will now have zip as the extension. Then on the Blackboard site, you'll go to the assignment link, and when you're there, it'll ask you to point to the file that you're going to submit. It's a little hard to see in the window we've got going here. Let's see if I can get this size working nicely for you to be able to view it. There we go. Here you can attach a file and you just choose Browse My Computer and then locate where that zip file is that you just zipped up. It's right here. Choose that and then hit Submit. All right, I will do that now. And then that will do it. That's how you submit the project. And that should do it, and that's what you'll submit to me. So good luck, enjoy your assignment, and have fun with it, and I will look forward to viewing it.